The MISC Hull E is a planned capital ship in Star Citizen, expected to be the top of the tree for cargo hauling gameplay, and is badged up as a heavy freight ship. Think of those massive container ships. This is the spaceborne equivalent. Naturally, the idea of being at the helm of that much cargo has got many players excited about the possibilities on offer with this ship. I'm Forrester, and welcome to the Drydock, a series which delves deeper into the ships of Star Citizen. As the concept art for this ship is a little sparse and isn't yet available in-game, some of the footage you see is of the in-game Hull A and Hull C, which are much smaller, but the same sort of idea. This video will explore the background behind the Hull E, both in and out of game, then take a look at some of the attributes and statistics of the ship, before considering how that might all translate into gameplay. There are timestamps in the video description, although if you're interested in the whole series, you might prefer to watch this one all the way through. And whilst this channel usually focuses on what's currently in-game, necessarily this video will navigate the treacherous space that is speculation territory. Whilst every effort has been made to approach this video accurately, sometimes information is sparse and much is subject to change as time goes along, so please treat the content with a pinch of salt and not as a definitive promise as to what will happen. All of that said, let's dive into the background of the Hull E. The MISC Hull E was first announced in April 2015, although there was an oblique reference to a Hull series ship in the MISC manufacturer portfolio back in December 2013. The Hull E formed part of a wider announcement on the entire Hull series as the top of the tree, so to speak. Shortly afterwards, in May 2015, the Q&A for the Hull E became available. Since then, things have been fairly quiet, save for the release in-game of the Hull A and Hull C models. In the game universe, the A to D models of the Hull series were launched in 2802, with the Hull E a seeming afterthought in 2820, building on the great successes of the earlier models. It's also said that the Hull series is popular amongst the Xi'an. Further, there was an in-lore holo movie shot aboard a Hull E, titled Star Robbery, which perhaps is an ominous omen to potential owners of this large ship. The ship is also said to be well known in the verse as the top-end cargo hauler, with suggestions that pretty much anything moving a high volume of goods is likely to be using this ship to do so. On announcement in 2015, the Hull E was offered for sale for $550, which has subsequently increased to $750, although the Hull E only goes up for sale at limited times during the year. The stated purpose for the Hull E is as a heavy freight ship, built completely around large spindles to which cargo would be attached. The Hull E is set to do this at a scale that dwarfs every other ship. Interestingly, in both the concept work and in some of the more recent developer videos, there is some suggestion that the cargo grids could be used to attach things other than cargo, such as smaller ships or fighters. Clearly, the Hull E doesn't have the facilities of a dedicated carrier, but potentially could be used to move ships from point A to point B. Based on current information, the Hull E would have a total length of 372 meters, a total width or beam of 104 meters, and a total height or depth of 104 meters. For context, that's larger than an Idris in-game. These dimensions may well change over time as the ship is developed. After all, at one time this was the largest player purchasable ship concept. The total mass of the Hull E would be around 1,650 tons, which is a lot lighter than you might expect, perhaps due to be updated, or perhaps due to the fact that most of the mass of the ship would be the cargo it carries rather than the ship frame. By way of components, the only listings available are from the original concept many years ago, so some of the below may well be out of date, especially given the capital size of the ship. However, Those listings suggest a capital radar and 4 medium-sized computers. Power would be provided by a capital power plant, with cooling provided by 2 capital class coolers. Defensively, the Hull E would carry 2 capital shield generators. Those specifications also list 4 capital fuel intakes, 4 capital hydrogen fuel tanks, and 2 capital quantum fuel tanks. Both the quantum drive and jump drive are listed as capital sized. To propel the Hull E, the specifications list 10 main thrusters, 6 retro thrusters, and 12 fixed maneuvering thrusters located around the ship to help it turn and translate. By way of armament, the specifications for the Hull E list 2 remote turrets, one beneath the nose armed with 2 size 3 weapons, and one above the front section armed with a single size 5 weapon. That's really not much turret coverage for a ship of this size, and leaves the rear and sides very exposed. The crew specifications for the Hull E note a minimum crew of 4 to a maximum crew of 5. It's a little early to know what the realistic crew requirements for the ship are likely to be, especially given that cargo gameplay isn't the most exciting and involving of the gameplay loops by design. Successful cargo haulers probably want an uneventful trip. Realistically, roles that other players would perform, such as manning the remote turrets or performing engineering gameplay, probably aren't the sort of loops you'd want to be doing with a ship like the Hull E, which looks to much prefer keeping safe and hauling goods rather than being in the heat of battle. Accordingly, perhaps a realistic crew may be 1 or 2 players, potentially supported by NPC characters or blades. It's expected that the Hull E will include the usual amenities, things like habitation and beds for the crew. Supposedly, the Hull E may be able to land whilst the cargo spindles are retracted, although time will tell if that remains true as the ship is concepted further. Clearly, the other major facility is the cargo storage, which could potentially be over 98,000 SCU of cargo storage. To put that into perspective, the largest cargo hauler in-game right now is the Hull C with 4,608 SCU, followed by the C2 Hercules at 672 SCU. Obviously, the core gameplay for the Hull E is cargo hauling, and the ship is set to be at the top of the tree for that use case. Most players will recognise the idea of moving boxes from A to B, and the Hull E is all about moving ridiculous numbers of those boxes. Given the size of the Hull E, it's likely to be optimised to moving goods across larger distances and probably to space-borne destinations, where the economies of scale make it worthwhile loading a single transport versus doing multiple trips with smaller vehicles. There may be another use case in transporting things other than traditional commodity cargo, perhaps things like items, ships, or vehicles that could potentially be attached to the cargo grid to move around. Given that the Hull E is about transporting large amounts of cargo in a somewhat vulnerable form factor, the likely role for this ship is as the high-value centerpiece for other ships to protect. That's likely to be particularly true for entering riskier space. Given the size and scale of the Hull E, hopefully it's the sort of ship that might warrant an escort, but also have enough of an income to realistically afford one. Another potential interesting use case might be as a weird carrier. It's a bit of a meme how everybody thinks their ship can be a pocket carrier in Star Citizen, but the Hull E Q&A does talk about potentially being able to deploy Hornets in a similar way to how aircraft were deployed from submarines in World War II. That is to say, not really in the heat of combat, but perhaps away from the fight to then fly in. With the potential to attach small spacecraft to the cargo grid, that could be an option for the Hull E, albeit not with the speed or efficiency of a dedicated carrier, and clearly without facilities to be able to maintain or replenish. But probably most people will use their space cargo container ship for moving space cargo, and as the pinnacle of the cargo hauling gameplay loop, The Hull E is set to offer that top tier transport gameplay whenever it eventually hits the verse. At the risk of going on for too long, that'll pretty much wrap it up for the Hull E here, and so it's over to you to share your thoughts in the video comments. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, you might like to do that too, so that you can get the heads up for new videos on the channel, as well as offloading all of your crates onto the like button if you like heavily narrated slideshows talking about fictional spaceships. Otherwise, and as always, thank you for watching.